Welcome to my video, guys. I hope you like it. First, we'll be talking about Leto's Great Hammer. You can find this off of Silver Knight Leto in the Ring City, and it's a great hammer, as it says. Its special ability is that you can do a spinning attack and envelop it in rocks, making it do extra damage, and have a alternate form of a heavy R2 that explodes to do a little range. As you can see here, it's not exactly the best against quicker characters, but it is really good for poisoning through things if you have the HP like you see here. But at the same time, if you're up against a mage or an extremely fast person, it is easy-ish to roll through it, and you're not going to be roll catching too many people. But it does have high damage, which is definitely an upside. And overall, I'd say if you pair this with Havel Shield, if you do the weapon art of Havel Shield, you can become a pretty tanky monster that people will have to attack from long range to get any damage on. And overall, I think Leto's is a really good hammer. You just need the right equip load and you need the right defense to actually be able to make use of it correctly. And coming up next, we have the Ring Knight Spear. Personally, this is one of my favorite weapons from the Ring City because it allows you to close massive distances, do combo attacks, it does split damage, which I like about a weapon. After it uses weapon art, its attacks also incorporate fire into them, where it's R2s, instead of just the normal spear charging, it's a slash to the side, which uses fire. It is nice for chasing people down. Personally, I really like to keep this in my kit, just in general, for like invading and just general play. The ultimate also has... or the weapon art also has a really good amount of time that it stays up. It is a little easy to get parried if you go head on to the person, but you can do like some dead angling if you know how to do that, just going to the side. And I think this weapon is also really good for a character that can poise through a bunch of attacks. And the only thing that really is this weapon's weakness is parrying and dual charms that can remove status effects off your weapons, which can be painful. This weapon is good against spellcasters, from what I've seen. Decent against heavy characters that can poise through a lot of stuff. Personally, I like to be a heavy character when I do this myself. But even those really quick ones, when you're trying to pursue them and roll catch, comes in handy. The split damage on the Ring Knight Spear can be problematic at times if you're looking to do a lot of damage, because it's not just pure physical, and to do maximum fire damage and physical damage, you can't just use physical boosting stuff. It can't be buffed, which is kind of a bummer at times, but it has its own built-in weapon art buff. But overall, I'd say the Ring Knight Spear is really good because it's great for pursuing, it's good for head-to-head combat, and it's also really good at killing mages because you have a decent amount of reach, and their tactics of getting away from you is often just rolling, and it's not bad for roll catching. And coming in next on our list is Slave Knight Gale Sword. I really like this weapon because Slave Knight Gale Sword is just such a cool weapon. It's a broken version of the Executioner's Greatsword from the base game. It has very interesting weapon art with you do a up, down, slash, and it is one of the only weapons in the game that has a true combo. You can also do a bit of a lunge from out of range, but that can be parried kind of easily. Really, the only way you can hit major damage with it is from dead angling. Its R2s are good for a greatsword. It's the slashing, not the piercing. But It's good for roll catching, it has a good weapon art, it has great physical damage, and sadly you can't buff it, but it is the weapon of the final boss in the series, which personally is my favorite. It's good against heavy characters because it deals substantial enough damage to actually do like 2 to 300 through their really heavy armor. It's great against mage characters that are able to flee you because you can roll catch and you can take them down in 1 to 2 hits. Really, the only area where this sword suffers is intermediate characters. It's just okay there because they often have enough armor to not be 1 to 2 shot, but at the same time they have a damage output and poise to match yours. And I think this weapon's really suited for a heavy character, but otherwise besides that, I like how its weapon art can track people a little better than others, and you can do things like doing the L2 spam, or no, the L2 and then R2 version of the weapon art to do a backwards lunge and then lock on to the person, which most people don't really see happening much, but you can do that, and I think this is a good weapon for PvP. But even in regular worlds where you're like invading, this is great. Facing enemies, this is great. But now, on to our next weapon, the Demon Scar. This weapon is also a catalyst, but it's a curved sword. So what you want to use with this most of the time is a Pyromancer build. I really like using I like using a weapon shield from the Ring City, the Dragon Head shield. Often, if you're using this, you have low HP because you want to maximize the fire damage. But this is good for roll catching since it's a curved sword. I think it has one of the best curved sword weapon arts in the game, slightly followed up by the Pontiffs, because this has a great Chaos Fire Orb effect for its weapon art. But you also often, since it doesn't have that good poise, you want to have something that can stun them, like the Dragon's Head shield. Moving into our next weapon, the Giant Door shield. It's a bit of an interesting one because, in a way, it's not really a weapon, it's a shield, but the reason why I wanted to include it on here is because it's one of the strangest shields you can find, because it has a full weapon move set like an actual weapon. You can hold it up to block all physical damage and a lot of elemental, surprisingly, even though it's just wooden. But what I find most interesting of all is this thing's tracking, because if you do the weapon art and do R1, if you have someone charging right at you, doesn't matter if they're walking around, the weapon's still going to follow them. You might even walk through them with the weapon art. And at the same time, it's a relatively slow weapon in general, but you can hunker down to protect yourself from heavier damage that would knock down your shield. And yeah, from what I've seen, if you have the right poise during the weapon art, your shield can't be broken. And while you're attacking, you're always guarding, so it's extremely hard to get damage off on you. Personally, I would recommend this for a build that is focusing on being a tank, but still having a high strength, because that's what this thing demands. It is handy to not fat roll, so you can actually keep some distance, but if you do want to tank up a little bit, I would recommend Havel's shield as a secondary shield because of its weapon art, and it allows you to take some more damage at the cost of your speed, which with the weapon art isn't really a problem. It has multiple attacks that incorporate blocking, which I find to be very interesting, and at the same time, you can't use this with conventional weapon buffs. Most often or not, it's most likely going to confuse the ever-loving heck out of someone, because you just don't see this thing in PvP. I mean, you might have seen one guy use it once, but that's pretty much all you're gonna get if you're someone that's actually trying to figure out how to counter this thing. And the main way to counter it is when they start backing off, it's often when they've ran out of stamina, so that's when you gotta charge at them. It's either that or use heavy damage lightning attacks or other attacks of the sort and slowly whittle them down through the shield. Whips also work, the ones that get around shields. I mean, it's going to be a little harder since this is so big, but charging at it with an axe is definitely not going to work, and you're not going to have a fun time if you have a stationary weapon art like the axe berserk thing where it takes a second to get you a buff on damage. And to even do any damage through the shield, you're going to need some sort of an elemental effect, like fire, arcane, something of the sort. From what I've seen, this build is really, really good against physical damage, people with great swords and that type of stuff. Against mages, it's pretty good because they often can't deal enough damage to substantially take away a good chunk of your health, while you can do a good portion. I found on stairs, enemies can sometimes get weird enough angles to where their axe or something faces through. So be careful about going on stairs when you're using this weapon. But at the same time, this is one of my favorite weapons to use because even though there are ways to counter it, there's not a truckload, and people are just confused enough most of the time to where they can't even tell. And I think it's also good to have a secondary if your door strategy starts failing, but this is going to bring us to the end of our video. I will be doing a part 2 on this because I didn't have enough time to make a short enough video and include all of the weapons. Let me know in the comments if you like this, and if you want more shields like the giant door shield to be included, because I don't have all the shields, but I could get them. And I think this DLC's weapons are very, very interesting in what they bring into the Dark Souls 3 PvP and general play. And like and subscribe if you haven't already. And let's see, I will be doing stuff with invasions more soon. Just I want to try to get some of these videos out of the way because I want to do this type of stuff. But let me know if you like the type of content that I'm doing, if this is better, or if the Magic the Gathering stuff is better. And have a good day, and goodbye.